wonderful points.
Yes. On the same website as I talked about with Dr. Pelosi, it's absolutely 100% denial that women regret abortion. I cannot tell them that I've talked with women and helped them to overcome this, which I have, and their babies' dads. I've talked with them, and some of my students before. They just don't believe it. They say anybody who regrets has been duped. They're getting this right. They've been talked into it. They've been guilted into it. They think they are really regretting it, but if they regret it, they had psychological problems before the abortion. What in the world? Talk about, and these are women. Talk about women disrespecting women.
Somebody mentioned the mushy middle earlier at one of the talks. We have a vast group in the mushy middle. There are those of us on one side, what is it, like 20% on each side, and the rest of the mushy middle. I do believe that for some people, there's nothing you can say. There is absolutely nothing you can say to convince them. We need to stop trying to convince them and work on getting that mushy middle with us, because then we'll win. That's not to say that responding to these people isn't good, because you never know when you're going to reach someone. You never know when that little spark, you know. And I'll mention one other thing too that I think Dr. Pelosi mentioned, and that is that the Rogerian method of argumentation. Every time I start talking to someone who is not with me on the life issue, the first thing I do is listen. I want to know where they're coming from. How did their attitudes develop? What's most important to them? Because then I can effectively respond. So for some of these people, you may be providing those services. I would encourage you to keep that going, but I think our pro-life work needs to be targeted at mushy middle. That's who we need. That's the only way we can win. There aren't enough of us in this room. We need to bring in more people.
You got another question?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. It's interesting, when the 14th Amendment was passed, if all of the states, many of the states had pro-life laws protecting the baby, why was it never brought out, or was it ever brought out or researched, why those laws were not immediately struck down as unconstitutional before Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton?
Nobody brought a case. Everybody was happy with the laws the way they were, except for, of course, the abortionists who were performing abortions illegally. But there was no basis for them bringing a case. You know, they were happy with the situation the way it was. So it was, you know, a lot of it in the law has to do with timing and everything. So, yeah. Okay. Oh, yes.
I'm familiar with the state prior to Roe versus Wade, but you said that they all considered them a person. Was there actually language that used the word person in the state's laws? Or was it just protection or prohibition of abortion?
They talked about protecting the baby. They didn't use the word person, but they talked about protecting the baby, you know, protecting the child. There were a couple that used fetus, but there were a large number that actually said baby. They didn't use the word person, though. I mean, the 14th Amendment was obviously about protecting African Americans. That's what that was about. So nobody was really thinking in terms of abortion, you know. And remember back then, when you were pregnant, you kind of went into seclusion. So it's not something that was talked about in polite company, you know, especially in the deliberations regarding the constitutional amendment. So I don't think the issue really came up, you know. But if you looked at the laws, it was clear that they considered unborn children to be real, you know, to be human, to be something to be protected. It wasn't just about the woman's health. Yes?
Well, to follow up with that, you know, and I know you and I, we really like the idea of trigger laws, which would mean when Roe v. Wade is overturned, then the babies would be protected, abortion would be outlawed in the state.
Right.
If Roe v. Wade were overturned in those 32 states, would those laws come back in force, or are they done and gone?
Well, there are approximately, I think, 8 or 9 that are still on the books. Unfortunately, Ohio's was wiped off the books. So Ohio actually repealed its law. So our pre-Roe law is not on the books. But there are a few states where they are still. Those would come back. Those would come back into effect. The vast majority of states were going to have to fight the battles, which I welcome. I can't wait for that day. So. Actually, just a little side story. My first involvement in the pro-life movement was in 1972, going down to Columbus, Ohio from Cleveland in a bus that was sponsored by the Catholic Diocese to oppose the repeal of Ohio's law. So that was the very first experience that I had. And of course, we beat it back that time, but it was a bus. The Catholic Church was very involved in protecting unborn children back then, and still is, of course. So, Yes.
Denise, I've seen on a lot of social media and other indicators that 20% that are probably as adamantly pro-life as pro-abortion as I am pro-life, they're trying or attempting to redefine their language where they're really out there. They're saying abortion without apology.
Right.
Do you think that's going to fare well? I think it's going to take that mushy middle and pull them over more to our side.
Yes, I hope they do more of that. You know, the people that say, I had an abortion, the T-shirts and some of those efforts, those have been going on for over 10 years and that hasn't helped them. The other thing that's interesting about the efforts of Planned Parenthood and other groups to get away from the choice word, one of the reasons they say they're doing it is because they found in polls that a lot of people say that they're pro-life, but what they're really saying is they're pro-life for themselves, not in terms of the law. But we need some better polling to really identify how many pro-lifers we have out there, because I think the polls misrepresent things very badly. But that's why they're doing it. They feel like pro-choice has become a bad term and it doesn't really
Right.
reflect. So it hurts them more
doesn't.
than it helps them, so, which I find fascinating. Okay.
Thank you very much, Denise.